Hey everybody, Jason Burmis here. And as it was reported yesterday, it was a big trend, especially because the Koch brothers are absolutely notorious. And they've been in the news, in the mainstream now for, 15, 20 years as these sort of right wing, ultra conservative donors. Now, before we get into David himself, Charles is the other notorious brother, but there are others amongst them. And I would say that if you really want to get into the Koch brothers and a lot of the things that you don't hear about in the mainstream, Greg Palast, who's one of my favorite independent journalists, who wrote The Best Democracy Money Can Buy. There was a documentary film about that, did some great things with bin Laden and Bush family connections over the years. So if you really want to know more and more about, the Koch brothers and their network, definitely check out Greg Palast's work. Now, let's get into the death of David Koch. Number one, I don't dig into people when they die. It's not a cool thing to do. If you're going to expose anything, expose their policies. Thank you for the super chat. Love is for a four-letter word. Keep up the good work. Much respect to you. So this is not going to be a bash piece on this guy, other than the fact that you have an oligarchical class, a billionaire class that absolutely pulls the strings, not only behind the scenes, but a lot of the times up front when you have the Koch brothers, doing a lot of their own media relations, doing interviews, trying to sell themselves as more libertarian. I'm seeing libertarian headlines on this. Okay? So let's take this away. He was 79. I'm a 40-year-old guy. That means my life could be half over. I'm not a billionaire. Hopefully I last a little bit longer, but it lets me know the Grim Reaper comes for all. I mean, there are those like Kissinger that are, hitting that triple-digit mark, and people like David Rockefeller, that made it over 100. But at the end of the day, you're not here forever. And maybe that's why the appeal now through technology is really this push for transhumanism, but we'll get to that later. So the media is focusing on Bill Maher and what he said, F him, I'm glad he's dead, I hope the end was painful. And look, I'll tell you this, as a young man, a lot of people don't know that Bill Maher's Politically Incorrect, which is before Real Time on HBO, that was on Comedy Central, and that was way before Comedy Central was the kind of network it was today. It didn't have a lot of original shows. Most days it was showing stand-up comics and reruns of old comedy shows. But that was one of their original things. Chris Rock was a correspondent on it, and it got me sort of interested in politics. And even getting into my college years, the way that he was leaning, and this is all pre 9/11, remember, was very fashionable at the time. And it's so easy to say, F a billionaire, he's the cause of all our problems, et cetera, et cetera. And I assure you, David Koch is not a good person, but I'm not going to wish a painful death on anybody. However, this is the thing. When we start painting this stuff as left and right, it's a total false perspective. Now, you may have seen my video or may have not, especially if you're a new viewer, that to expose the left-right paradigm, I talk about this sometimes, but 2 months ago, really a little less than 2 months ago, Soros and Charles Koch, the remaining big-time billionaire brother of David who just passed, decided that they were going to stop the forever wars together. So what did they do? Again, total supposed enemies, but remember, George Soros has been exposed. He's talked about himself. He's in it for the profit. He doesn't really care about, building a better tomorrow or the policies of certain areas. He wants to make money. He wants to gain power. And in the same sense, that's what this Koch empire is about. So the Quincy Institute, which they put together, is going to stop these forever wars that the United States has started. Now think about that, what that might entail. What if we had a rise of, in the last 15 years, mercenaries, private military groups? Blackwater got a bad name, XC Services, Academy. Now they've spun it that it's okay. In the public's mind, private military groups are great. So eventually when the United States has to leave because we get exposed for our bullshit policies, especially in places like Syria. Remember, we're supposed to still fear Al-Qaeda, but we work with Al-Qaeda in Syria. I mean, and Tulsi Gabbard is out there saying this as a presidential candidate. And what does Google do? Before she actually said that after she's had to sue Google because they stopped her from doing her ad campaign. She's not a perfect candidate either. That's not what this is about. So anyway, we've covered this story. We've talked about how both sides of the spectrum are actually funding full spectrum dominance. That's what this is. And that includes, that's right, censoring the internet. And so Breitbart does a really good job here. And they talk about Soros and his pledge to the ADL after the Charlottesville project at combating online extremism. Oh, okay. Remember, all the big companies are in on it. Comcast, NBC Universal. I don't know what the Kreese Foundation is, I'll be honest. And George Soros Charitable Foundation. Hope Not Hate. So that's basically the SPLC over there. And here's the thing. What is hate speech? What is hate speech? Now you get down to here and you start seeing that the Koch Institute now appears to be committed to advancing internet censorship or content moderation, as they might call it. Sarah Ruger, the Institute's director of Free Expression Initiative, has praised Airbnb for canceling the reservations of far-right activists and has called for online hate to be treated like a virus. Here's the thing. You may not agree with somebody, but let them speak. Combat hateful speech with more speech. That's what I've always been about. And remember, when you have people being labeled domestic terrorists, okay, domestic terrorists, because they talk about things like false flag events, doesn't matter on record, Gulf of Tonkin, USS Liberty, also proposed events that were in Operation Northwoods. They didn't go through, but they certainly were proposed, and they were more than just a drone. And no, they weren't shooting up movie theaters. We've gone over that. But what was that was that they did say that they would sponsor a terror campaign in Miami and let off, I believe it was plastic explosives, sometimes some type of explosive devices in the area. That's scary enough. That's in the 60s. I'm sure with FOIAs we could get a lot more of proposed false flag terror. And once again, now with the privatization of so much of this military stuff, right, on top of the intelligence stuff, in my last video, if you watch my video on the Monopoly game, the socialist parody, believe me, there's a lot more there, folks. I didn't do that as a fluff piece. We talk about a lot. And one of the things we talk about is the privatization of the military-industrial complex and intelligence agencies, big data firms, et cetera, et cetera. Now, in this respect, right, what else do you have? You have the privatization of military groups as well, PMGs. And you have a guy like Soros who's still festering and alive, and Charles Koch who's still festering and alive, to be able to control those types of groups, or at least their masters, or their minions, or their cohorts, or their accomplices. Get to control privatized military groups in regions that are resource heavy, full and abundant of things worth a lot of money, as well as military position, influence, and the ability to instill their own policies in those governments. Policies of censorship, apparently. So that's the real deal, guys. If you enjoyed this video, if you like a perspective that is not left or right, please hit that subscribe button, thumbs this video up, share it with others. I'd like to remind everybody I'm also a documentary filmmaker if you're new. If you go to my channel, where you can see the playlist button where I'm doing 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 videos a day, right? You go to this playlist and you can actually watch in my documentary films, when all of my films, Loose Change, Final Cut, Fabled Enemies, Invisible Empire, A New World Order Defined, and Shade the Motion Picture. So please check those out as well. I do everything for free. I give it all away. There are no special videos. There is no hidden message. I'm not keeping any sources from you guys. So if you like what I do and you can financially support me, $5, $10, $15 means the world. That's how we're doing this 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times a day. Look for more videos today. And like I said, we're going to have some stuff from the archives going up in the next couple days as well. I want to thank you for the support, and I will see you all on the flip side.